Well, anybody that knows my show or has listened to me in the past knows that if I have 20 plus years of experience in sports talk, I feel like I wrote my thesis on the 1985 Chicago Bears. Any and all documentaries about the Bears 85 team I have watched. I have read multiple books about them, and I oftentimes find myself just talking incessantly about the 85 Bears. I did not grow up in Chicago, but they are for some reason the singular team of my childhood, my football life. I'm not quite sure why it's occupied so much space in my brain. But that's why this is exciting, because there is a new documentary on the Super Bowl Shuffle. It is called The Shuffle. It's available on HBO Max. And joining us here on the show is director Jeff Cameron. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm great. This is a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, my pleasure to have you as well. Let's set the scene about the 85 Bears before we get into the nuts and bolts of the Super Bowl Shuffle itself. I have asked this question many times to myself over the years and to other NFL authorities that I appreciate and respect. Why do you think the 85 Bears, 40 years later, still are kind of like a synonymous one phrase, one name that lives forever, where we really don't have any other teams that live like this in our imaginations?
I think it's the fact that the 85 Bears, were probably the first time in the sport where you had a collective team celebrity. I think before the time you get to 85, you certainly have these singular football players that transcended the sport into that pop culture mainstream. You have your Joe Namath, Jim Brown, your O.J. Simpson, of course. By the time you get to the 85 Bears, I think it's the first time from the top down. Almost everyone on that team is their own celebrity and personality in their own right. Coach Ditka, down to the rookie defensive tackle, Fridge Perry, of course. Just on and on listing the names and the Hall of Famers on that team. So everyone, and we kind of point out in the film at that time, was getting their own commercials. The offensive line had their own poster. Everyone was getting promotions, and I think to for the whole team to be a celebrity as opposed to just a star player was unique and is memorable.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And as I think about it, they might be the only team that is known for team-wide celebrity. I mean, there are other teams that live in the pantheon, like the 72 Dolphins, because they were undefeated, are the 72 Dolphins. You could talk about Murderers Row, the 2070 Yankees, and things of this nature that are a million years ago. But in terms of the Bears, they are all kind of equally famous. There is, I mean, Walter Payton's the greatest of them, but there is kind of an equal fame to all of it, by team, by season, by city, by celebrity. And it's just such an interesting thing. I mean, you've worked for Hard Knocks, so you know the inner workings of the NFL and legacy building and all of that. There just isn't anything like the 85 Bears. There still isn't, right? I mean, there just still does not, there's not a team that captures the imagination in the last 40 years in NFL history like that one did.
Yeah, and it's such a unfortunately for Chicago, it was kind of a I know they went to the 84 NFC Championship game, but the 85 season was kind of a flash in the pan in terms of if you zoom out far enough, that was their only Super Bowl appearance since in the Super Bowl era. They hadn't won a championship since '63, and of course they hadn't won one since. So it's this kind of singular, unique moment in time. And I was interviewing Mike Singletary for this doc, and he even speaks to the fact that it was that season and the shuffle, it happened, and just like that, it was gone, and they were on to the next thing, and they never were quite able to recapture that magic. So I think that kind of helps the mystique and the legend of that year and that team.
It's part of it. It really is part of it, because if they win in 86 or they won in 84 or they win in 87 or 88, all good teams, it doesn't live the same. It just, they would be a great team, and maybe they would be more stamped by history as this kind of great team that didn't only win one, but because it's only one and because there's the year associated, maybe it's because it's easy to say 85, but because of 85 Bears, that there's only one time that it happened and they were that dominant for that one year. It's kind of mythical, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, the '86 Bears doesn't sound quite as good, as intimidating.
I'm sure that when you make the Super Bowl shuffle and you talk to all these former Bears, it comes up. Any of them any of them able to explain why it was a 1 year magical tour and not multi years where they won again?
I think they all have different opinions on why that happened. Um, I wasn't able to get a great consensus on why uh, that year and only that year. I certainly Coach Buddy Ryan moving on didn't help, of course. But I don't know if there's a reason that's going to satisfy anybody as to why that was the only year.
Yeah, that's kind of maybe the most fascinating part about all this is that there wasn't kind of a clean explanation of why the 85 Bears live as just the 85 Bears. In 86, they lost, going into 86, they lost Buddy. There's the Jim McMahon injuries. There's the two losses in the playoffs to Washington, maybe just a bad matchup in the playoffs for them. Maybe there was fame. Maybe it was the fact that Ditka kind of needed Buddy, but whatever that was, they had it for a brief moment. And so the Super Bowl shuffle is really interesting because you would think they made this after they won the Super Bowl or perhaps the week of the Super Bowl, maybe going into the playoffs. Oh, no, 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 no. This was a team that made the Super Bowl shuffle video. Was it November? I mean, it was before the Miami Monday night game where they had their first loss, right?
Yeah. So it comes together. I think it's presented to Willie Galt and the Bears around week 7. Week 11 is when they record the vocals, the lyrics, and then like you said, the Miami game Monday night. That's week 13. The following morning, they record the music video, and it's put together and released about a week or two later. So yeah, I was like most fans. I thought it was they beat the Rams in that NFC Championship game, and they do this as a kind of a fun celebration. We're back. We're in the Super Bowl for the first time. That was not the case. And once I kind of read, into that and learned that, I knew that was going to be a good hook and a good thread throughout the film to remind viewers, by the way, this is still the regular season.
Yeah, I think that's also part of the mystique and the lore of the Bears is that they were so self-confident, they were so cocksure, they were so inevitable that they just knew they would run roughshod over everybody. And I mean, Willie Galt gets the pitch in week 7. This is before bye weeks. Week 7 is late October. It might not even be late October. Week 7 might be mid-October. Imagine these days in mid-October, somebody in the NFL being so confident that a locker room could be like, yeah, we could tape a Super Bowl video right now. We're that sure. That just in today's NFL is so alien considering how close everything is packed up and how you're not supposed to be too arrogant and get ahead of yourself, take it week by week. Anybody can beat anybody in this league. Mid-October, they're getting a pitch for winning the Super Bowl, and they had never done it. It wasn't like they were coming off winning a Super Bowl. That's what's wild.
Exactly. Yeah. No, guys like, nowadays, if they even show the slightest hint of confidence about their next opponent or a shade of a guarantee that they might win their next game, it's bulletin board material. It's all over the morning shows. You can't escape it. It's all anyone talks about. So the fact that they they sang a rap song or they rapped to a music video about going to the Super Bowl in November is outrageous.
And, because they were so great, it worked out. They ripped through everybody in the playoffs. But that Miami game, their lone loss of the season, they really get their butts handed to them. They don't know how to handle the Dan Marino quick strike. Buddy and Ditka fighting at halftime. Was there regret from guys that taped it after that game? Did we get ahead of ourselves?
100%. And that's, in the short doc, that's where we start. That's where we start the story because it's their, like you said, they were inevitable, but at that point in the season, that's where they had their most doubt. Walking off the field in Miami, they got their tails kicked. They fully admitted it on national television, no less. So they're sitting on the tarmac in Miami, and Willie Galt and Singletary have to kind of get the guys go up and down the aisle and remind them of the commitment they made. They sang the song already, by the way, 2 weeks ago. That's been recorded. The music is made. But they have a commitment. Of course, there's a charitable aspect that they want to follow through on. So that's one of the best parts of the film is Singletary kind of getting the guys back up and saying, as only he can, the Samurai, the leader of the defense, getting guys back in line and saying we made a commitment and imploring them to be there and show up and make good on their commitment.
So this is interesting. They had recorded the vocals, but not the cheesy music video yet. And so they lose to the Dolphins. They got to fly back to Chicago. And it's the next day that they've got to go into a studio to then record the dance part of it.
Yeah, yeah. So the next day, so the following morning, when they would have off, that was their off day. That's when they go and they lip sync and they do all the dancing to the music that had already been recorded.
Wow. So the video that you see is them smarting 24 hours or less after their only loss of the season against the Dolphins. That's pretty wild because they seem pretty footloose and fancy free and pretty confident there. They're all putting on a pretty good show.
Yeah, on 4 hours of sleep, because the flight, it's a Monday night from Miami to Chicago. Steve Fuller, of course, was injured in that game, so he shows up. He's on crutches. So Gary Fensick has the good story where people watch that video, and Fensick isn't the best dancer. He'll tell you so, and they say, well, Gary, you weren't, at least you were better than Steve Fuller, which is kind of faint praise because Steve Fuller could only move one leg. He's on crutches. Like it's backhanded compliment.
Now, it's my understanding that most of the team was together in one room, but was it McMahon and Walter Payton that were not shot in that studio, that they were separated from the team?
Yeah. So the following morning after that Monday night game, McMahon and Walter don't show up. And they have to they end up doing their parts against the blue screen at Hallis Hall. I guess they used to have a racquetball court in Hallis Hall. Who knew? So they set up a blue screen and a camera, and they're able to kind of picture in picture Walter and McMahon's performance about a week later.
Did they not show up because they thought it was a bad idea and had to be convinced into it? What happened there?
Well, I mean, it's tough to say for sweetness, but McMahon, we interviewed him, and he he insists that he didn't know there was going to be a video. He thought there was a song and it was for charity, and that was all fine and good, and no one outside of Chicago would hear it. But when he's presented with the fact that he did make a commitment, and all the other guys are doing it, I think he was kind of talked into you know finishing his end of the bargain.
That's funny. In 1985, it doesn't get shared on Spotify. It's not on YouTube. You don't just, you don't go viral. So how does the Super Bowl Shuffle make its way outside of Chicago to become kind of a national story?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's first of all, I think you have to give a lot of credit to MTV. This
So
is
they are
18, so
playing the Super Bowl Shuffle as a real music video.
yeah. In fact, in the short
Wow.
doc, we went to MTV, and I guess they used to have this promotion called Friday Night Video Fights, and there was a whole MTV NFL collaboration promotion in the week or two leading up to the Super Bowl where they aired the Super Bowl Shuffle. They had Bears and Patriots players do stand-ups because as the short doc reveals, the Patriots kind of had a response video of their own, which I did not know about until I started that project.
I did not know about this. Raymond Berry and Steve Grogan had a response video. Why haven't I ever seen this?
It's a great question, but it's on YouTube, believe it or not. Yeah, they responded with a music video of their own, and as I found out in making the doc, I showed it to each of the guys I interviewed, and they had not seen it, which blew me away. I figured that'd be passed around the locker room, or at least made apparent to them before they went and played them.
It's such an interesting snapshot also into that moment in time, mid 80s, and how MTV and music videos and the splash of celebrity all happens. And then it makes them all obviously super celebrities. They blow out the Patriots in the Super Bowl. And then there are a number of copycats after that. I remember that the Giants, the following season, do a way worse version. There's like 7 of them in an empty Giant stadium doing a terrible song and a terrible dance. And then you had the Rams just ram it. I mean, this ended up spawning a lot of terrible copycat stuff, didn't it?
In just that year alone, Dallas Cowboys, living the American dream, right? You have the Cleveland Browns, Masters of the Gridiron, Silver and Black Attack from the Raiders. It was just every team saw the shuffle and said, we can do that.
Well, that was all the 86 season. Those other 3 teams did one in or 85.
That's right.
Wow. Wow. So the So talk about a quick turnaround here. The Bears release what you're saying, the Super Bowl shuffle, week 13, week 14 or something like that. And within the final 3 weeks of the regular season is when three other NFL teams also try to create them.
No, I'm sorry. It was they were all in '86. So those
In
the
86.
Cowboys, Browns, Raiders, and Rams all in '80. The ensuing season kind of made the right version. I'm sorry.
That's hysterical. I mean, does the Bears Super Bowl shuffle hold up as the best of the bad, or did anybody actually take that top spot with all these videos?
I mean, the Bears were the only ones to follow through and actually win the Super Bowl after they
Yeah,
they did music. So they have
yeah,
that going.
yeah. So this is pretty cool, and it's amazing that Chicago's still waiting for another Super Bowl. They had been waiting for 20 some odd years for 85, and now they're waiting 40 years for their next one. And I don't know if we'll never get a team like the 85 Bears. I'm convinced it has to live in its own mosquito and amber type of thing. That's just that it is what it is. But boy, the 85 Bears in Chicago, no matter how far we get away from it, it's just like they are beloved times 1,000 everywhere you go in that city, right?
100%. And as as someone who works in NFL films, well, it's always a good opportunity to go back and watch their footage and just live in and those defensive highlights and Walter Payton. So always love going back to that team.
It's awesome. Well, Jeff Cameron, appreciate you dropping on by. HBO Max is where it's going to be available, everybody. Check it out, HBO Max. The Shuffle, all about the 85 Bears Super Bowl shuffle into immortality. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.